Well, now we know how we're going to set up our navigation, but we still need something to navigate to. I'm going to close up my Actions panel here, and we're going to go gather up the animations that we worked on in our previous chapters. I've actually put them all into an Assets file, so let's go up to the File menu here. I'll just choose Open, and in our Chapter 7 folder we should have a file called Sports Assets. Let's open that on up, and take a look at what we've got. The main timeline has the golf animation that we created. Everything's all set up, and it's still looking pretty good. So we'll just need to get that over into our Channel 4 Interactive file. Now let's just look around a little bit more. Over in the library, you can see that we actually have the basketball animation, the chopper, and the football animation. And they've been packaged in movie clips instead of sitting on the main timeline. Now that's actually an advantage. It makes it much easier for us to grab these right out of the library and pull them into any FLA file we want. Let's set this up. Now you'll notice I have Sports Assets open and the Channel 4 Interactive file open. When we open the library panel, we're normally seeing the library associated with the FLA file that we have selected. But you'll notice up here at the top, it's actually a pull-down menu. And I can look at any library for any open project. Now there's also a button up here at the top of my library panel that allows me to open up a second library panel. I'll just click, and there's my second library panel. I'm going to pull this one away from the docking point for a moment so that we can see our two library panels sitting side by side. Since both panels have a pull-down menu that allows me to select which library to look at, this makes it an easy way to move something from one library to another. If I want to use the basketball animation, all I have to do is grab a hold of that movie clip and drag it into my other library. Now you can see the basketball animation appeared there, and any artwork that's needed along with it as well. I'm going to grab the chopper and the football animation, and we're going to copy all of those into our library so that we can use them. Now that's pretty easy. Our golf animation is going to be a little bit harder. So let's close up our library panel here, and I'll redock this one right up here at the top, and let's see what we can do about moving this animation. As we can see, we've got a lot of pieces. There's all kinds of artwork, layers, keyframes, and even motion tweens. But luckily for us, there is a way to move these items around. Now what I'm going to do is grab all of the frames in our animation. The easiest way to do that is to click up here on the first frame and first layer, and then I'm going to scroll down to the end of our animation, right about frame 120, and the bottom layer, I'll hold down Shift and I'll click on the bottommost corner. Now what that should have done is selected the entire block of frames. That's everything in our animation, all the way from the beginning to the end. With this kind of selection, we can't just use a normal copy. But if I go up to the Edit menu, down underneath the normal cut, copy, and paste is our timeline cut, copy, and paste. And I'm going to copy the frames right out of the timeline. Now that copied everything. Now all we need to do is go over to our Channel 4 Interactive file and paste it in. Now I don't want to paste it in this timeline because it's going to make a big mess. So I'm going to go up to my Insert menu and choose New Symbol. Now we normally don't choose this. We usually grab something on the stage and convert it to a symbol. But choosing New Symbol creates a new symbol for us, and it just happens to be blank. When I press that, it still asks me for a name. So I'm going to call this Golf Anim. I'll leave it as a movie clip, and I don't need to select a registration point because remember, it's going to be empty. When we click OK, it creates my new movie clip for me. It opens it up, and we can definitely see that it's completely empty at this point. Now let's bring in our animation. Since we copied frames, we're going to need to paste frames onto a frame. So I'm going to go up to our frame 1, right out of our timeline. I'll go back up to our Edit menu, and in the Timeline submenu, I'm going to choose Paste Frames. Now you can see we successfully moved the entire animation over, and now it's packaged inside of a movie clip just like our other animations were. In all honesty, it might be better just to create your animations inside of a movie clip if you know you want to move them around. And then you won't have to do such a delicate cut and paste operation. But whenever you do need to, you can just cut and paste just like we did. Now that we've got a few movie clips to work with, let's go back to scene 1 and we can drop our content in. Since we were setting up the news button, let's finish that off. I'm going to go over and add a layer for our news. So I'll click on the buttons layer, press the insert new layer, and it goes right above buttons, and we'll name that news. I'm going to go up to our library, and I'm going to drag out our Chopper 4 animation right into our new news layer. We'll just select our news movie clip, and I'll move it down so it's resting right on the bottom of the stage, and we have a little bit of space between our buttons and the object. Now, as you can see, that's covering up our welcome text, so we're going to need to move our keyframes around a little bit. I want to make sure my news pops up after the logos have come in, so I'm going to select that first frame, and then with it selected, I'm going to drag it over to, let's say, about frame 35. Now, as you can see, the news won't appear at the beginning of the animation, and it'll drop right into place at frame 35. Now, I don't want my start text here all the time either. I actually want to remove it, even though it's being nicely covered up by our news animation. Well, we can do that by going to the same start frame in our start page text layer and inserting a blank keyframe. I'll do that from my menu up here at the top. We'll go to the timeline submenu. I'll insert a blank keyframe, and as you can see, what that does is actually removes the text from the rest of the animation. Blank keyframes are a great way to get something to disappear from the stage. Now, as you can see, frame 35 in my timeline is where our news is going to show up. So all I need to do is go back to the keyframe we created for our news label, and I'm just going to select that and drag it down to frame 35. We've already set our button up to go to frame 35. So all we should have to do now is test our movie. Now, once again, I have my animation stopping kind of midway here, but when I click the news button, the news comes up, and we're also seeing our animation looping there in the playback. It is interesting to note the actual action script we used on our button. The action script said go to and stop. So it's actually moving to frame 35 and stopping in that location. But since we're only stopping this timeline, we can see that the copter timeline, which is sitting right here on the news layer, is just going to loop and play as long as we're sitting there. So it allows us to get a playing animation and a stopping animation at the same time. Now, what I'd really like to do is set it up so that my animation didn't stop in the middle of my tweening the items in, but somewhere here at the end. So I'm just going to grab that stop keyframe. Remember, that's the action script we had on frame 15 here. And if I just move that down a little bit, let's say to frame 30, now my animation will play right up here at the beginning and stop, giving our users time to see the animation for the logo, read the welcome text, and decide which button to press. And that's how a basic navigation system is going to work.